Welcome everybody to another blood-sucking loadout. This time round, it's for the mysterious astral count himself, Jenos. Now what is a loadout and what makes it vampirific, you may very well ask. Well, the loadout is called Genospheratu. It literally writes itself, folks, Genospheratu. I think if there was anybody hiding their identity in the Paladins world and they were a count, they would go for that. If they were called Jenos, they would totally go for it, Genosferatu. Also, when you're using this loadout, you have to use a Millennium skin, otherwise you don't look like a vampire count. I mean, just look at Jenos in the Millennium skin, he looks like a vampire count. And in the story, he was looking on the mountains, looking into space. How long was he on those mountains? Maybe he was there for more than a human lifespan because he's a vampire. So what makes this Genosferatu loadout possible is the Penumbra card in his deck. And in this loadout, we're taking that to the maximum level, which is 4, which gives you 32% lifesteal. That's over the maximum life rip as soon as you jump into the game. So the other cards in this loadout could be cycled out for other things. The only thing is, Relativity 3, once you apply your Astral Marks to somebody, gives you 120 health per second over 10 seconds, and this is almost a continuous heal whilst you're out of combat and whilst you're not firing at people. And I'll talk about the pitfalls of Jenos' weapon and using it for lifesteal a little bit later, and why this kind of is a stopgap and why I think it's important to have both the options for sustaining yourself. The Retrograde 3 is there, reducing cooldown on Astral Mark by 1.5 seconds, only because the Astral Mark is so important. And at the end of the day, in most matches, if you pick up the Jenos and you're playing casual, most people probably won't pick another support, so you'll end up doing a lot of healing anyway. So this will give you just that little bit extra of a nudge. This is a bit of a filler, but the Lorentz configuration 1, increasing ammo count by 2, is interesting because Jenos has quite a big reload time and a small magazine size to begin with, which limits his ability to really lifesteal and sustain himself whilst head-on attacking somebody, which is what this vampire loadout is all about. Again, Astral Cycle 1, increasing the duration of Astral Mark by a little bit, is just going to help out your team, but I do think perhaps the Retrograde 3 could be taken out and replaced by Falling Star 4, which is the ability which you get cooldowns if you eliminate somebody after you Void Grip them because you are very aggressive, but also come onto the pitfalls of Void Grip when you're trying to do the lifesteal as well a little bit later, and why it might not quite fit in, and why the reduction of cooldown might be better as a single card. Anyway, what's the idea with this vampiric loadout, you may very well ask? Well, I first off tested it out in a few Onslaught matches just to get a feeling and just to go out and see if I had it in me to drain people's life away from them for myself, for my sustenance, and it turned out I did, and actually it was quite fun to use. And especially in the Onslaught matches, you're very close, there's a lot of confrontations where you're face to face, and a few duels that Jenos can sort of go through with. Especially with big targets and frontliners that come at you with their relatively low damage, you can sort of keep up the pace with their damage and lifesteal it back as you duel them. And I think a lot of the characters in the game you can sort of do pretty well at dueling 1v1, although bursty flanks are still going to take you out pretty quickly if they're using their mobility and you're missing a bit. And it can be annoying trying to take out an Androxus as you're firing into them, and then the reversal goes up as you need that life rip to stay alive. But hear me out here, there's something interesting about this, because not only can you have the Penumbra 4, you can stack that with the life rip item in game. Now I was testing it out in the shooting range, and basically without Luminary, the legendary card which you give 15%, you get 38 damage for a body shot, this is without the life rip, and 57 for a headshot. Now let's compare that without Luminary to level 3 life rip, and you get 74 for a body shot and 111 for a headshot, which is almost double it, which makes sense because it's 30% instead of the 32% you have base. So it stacks, so you have 62% lifesteal whilst you're firing. If you take Luminary, you can go from 44 for a body shot and 63 for a headshot without life rip 3, and with life rip 3 you can get a body shot of 85 and 122 with a headshot, so it also stacks with the headshots too, which is worth considering. And getting 85, and a lot of the time if you're close enough to an enemy, you can get quite a lot of headshots off, so you'll be getting 122 every shot, and that's every 0.13 seconds. Again, I've had quite a lot of engagements where I've been able to just basically get it up on full. Also with Jenos like this, with your Astral Mark and you're getting healing passively anyway, whenever you're in an engagement it's kind of worth firing at enemies that are in medium range as well to try and get your damage back. Because Jenos' damage drop off has a pretty decent range actually, so you can pot shot and gradually get your life back up by firing at enemies that are in mid range. There are some problems which will probably keep this build in the more fun zone and maybe playing on Onslaught just for fun. One of the first issues is that Void Grip is quite a big deal with Jenos. Being able to pick somebody out, put them in the air, let your allies focus on them is a big deal, but the problem is whenever you try and do this Void Grip, and especially if your team aren't watching and you try and get somebody pinned down and you look around, you've wasted the time that you can get back your life rip, and because you can't fire back whilst you've got them in the air, so you get nothing back for that. And you're kind of putting all your eggs in the basket of, I need to stay alive when I'm firing at somebody. I think in duels I've lifted people up and thought, this is actually hurting me pulling them up in the air like this, so I should just keep on firing at them, getting this 122 possible damage back with the headshots. The other big downside, and I mentioned it before, and why there's Lorentz Configuration 1, the card with the ammo count, is that with Jenos, with the 24 shots base, it's so low, and the reload timer is slow as well, meaning it's quite difficult to have consistent damage all of the time to keep yourself life ripped up. And you'll often find that in a duel, you might not finish a duel before you have to reload, and that's most of the times that you will actually go and perish. I guess I could stab you in the heart with a stake, that would probably work, just make sure it's wooden, maybe ordained with a bit of holy water. The other big problem, and stacking all of this life rip, is the option of cauterize, and why it probably is going to stay a fun loadout rather than a serious loadout. Because both ways, you kind of want another healer to be on your team to give more consistent heals and more burst heals, because if you're going to be truly aggressive, you want to take that Luminate and you want to get the mega life rip, so you want to be dueling people, being aggressive, being more of a damaged Jenos in this form. But I will say this, always try to keep your Astral Mark up no matter what. It's just so easy to do, especially if you have the group UI up. You can just basically see which teammates need healing and try and look around and see where they are and hit it off. You want that to be on cooldown all of the time. I know that all your allies are going to say, need healing, trash Jenos healer at the end of the game, but you'll know that you've had your heal on cooldown the whole game and you'll have the high ground. Seriously, hi-rez really need to add a Astral Mark symbol for allies when they are getting the heal on their UI, because people are getting frustrated about nothing at the moment. Anyway, problem if you have another healer is that the enemy team are almost certain to pick up and stack Cauterize, which is going to reduce the amount of life rip you get back. And because the Cauterize is so high, it kind of makes you picking up life rip almost diminishing returns, because even low levels of Cauterize are going to affect it pretty massively. But if you're a solo Jenos and you're using this life rip loadout, the Genospheratu, then you've got the problem that you can't really keep your team up quick enough. And you might be tempted to take up Celestial Touch rather than Luminary so that you can have a bit more burst healing potential on your allies. Now that could also be a keen option, and the thing is, even if you're being aggressive, all you need to do is look across the map to where your ally is, and if you're in the front lines, you'll probably be close enough to your ally to heal them with that Celestial Touch. That's the one that gives the allies 15% of the maximum health straight away. But I feel, and I've been seeing a lot of Jenos, is that even though you've got quite a bit of damage as Jenos, a lot of Jenos that are effective as a healer are a bit more passive and a bit more hidey. They tend not to die a lot in the game, a bit like Ying, as they can jump around with their illusions, but Jenos can heal behind walls and stay out of combat when they're low, whereas this Jenos literally wants to jump into the action, get in people's faces, make sure they can sink their fangs into the enemy's neck, and draw out that nutritious lifeblood. So I don't see competitively Genosferatu working out all too well. Maybe you'll pick up some Lifesteal, because it is a little bit of sustain if you are being quite aggressive, but don't get out of your crypt just yet to try and see some on an esports game. Anyway, I do think it's interesting with this loadout that this Penumbra is just a normal card, whereas on Tyra it's a part of a loadout, and you can technically get 2% more with this card than Tyra can with a legendary card, which is a little bit crazy actually. And it is actually quite a big deal, and I think that the life rip is better early game because people are going to have level 1 Cauterize, so you'll have a bit more chance to stay alive and sustain yourself. I've also played a few siege maps with Genosferatu. What seems to be happening at the moment is if people see a Jenos and a healer on your team, your allies won't pick up an extra healer because they're like, yes, we've got to support. They're going to support us. They're going to be 100% in on the healing. And you're going to be there like, oh, but I want a Genosferatu. And what will happen in the matches, you'll probably be stuck on the point, guarding it if you're doing well. so it's not always fun and games. But if you want to have some clean vampiric fun, then go ahead, don your cloak, put on your best Dracula voice, and go ham with Genosferatu. If you do want to steal my loadout and maybe even tweak it, then you can always search for the loadouts in the search for a name feature in the loadouts import loadout, and import by name, and you can just type in Joshino and it'll be Genosferatu listed. It's actually my third one down if you do want to pick it up. Again, disclaimer, just for fun mainly, but it can be successful as long as the enemy team don't react to it, they don't stack the cauterize, maybe you don't have to commit too much to healing, and hopefully you can have some fun and pick up the Luminary Astral Mark Legendary. Again, just remember to be a little bit careful with your void grips. You don't want to be using your vampiric strangle too much when you could be draining their life. Anyway, what does everybody else think about this loadout? What does everybody else think about the ability for Jenos to have a pretty mega lifesteal and self-sustain and some dual potential there? And does anyone else feel a little bit sad for Tyra and her vampire focused legendary card? Be sure to let me know in the comments section below. I hope everybody has fun with this, but anyway, if you enjoyed the video, hit that like button, subscribe for more of my content. Until next time everyone, Joshino.